I'm Lisa, and welcome to American Aupair Host Mom. Today, we're going to talk about culture and how that impacts you and others in the Aupair program. So, first of all, I want to point out that it's important to know about culture and different insights, but also realize that people are people and individuals. For instance, I've hosted over 3 South African au pairs, and I've gotten some insights and learnings about South African culture. I'm in no way an expert. I feel that I got a deeper knowledge and relationship of my actual au pairs, Mari, Abby, and Izan. And that's what you get in the au pair program. It's about relationships. But knowing some of these cultures and differences can really help. We're going to talk about the general cultures of different countries. We're going to talk about what are the foreigner insights and surprises when they get here to America, which can be really fun. How do you optimize this information to have a really good interview? And how can you help reduce that culture shock that your au pair is going to experience for sure when they first get here? So let's jump into it. First of all, some generalizations on culture. So just to point out again, that subject of stereotypes. So Americans generally, our culture is independent. So less cooperative, more competitive. We tend to be louder, friendly, extroverted. But with that said, if I kind of said a typical stereotype of American, you might consider someone who is overweight, gunslinging, and loud to be the typical American. And while you'll certainly find some of these type of people, you'll also find people who are very quiet and different than what I've just described. So as we talk about these culture differences, keep that in mind, that everybody's an individual. So now let's jump into the overall culture types of different countries. So I don't have time to go through the hundreds of different countries that there are, but if we went through continents, for instance, South Americans, generally known as family-oriented, very warm, loving, laid-back, less structured, less time-orientated, while Europeans are generally considered more disciplined, structured, and time-orientated. And then you jump to Asian culture, where it's going to be more passive and collaborative, team and family focused, and more passive, so less eye contact, that kind of thing. So knowing these things might help you narrow down knowing how your family is to what country you want to focus on, but also remember everybody is an individual, so keep that in mind too. Now let's get to the really fun part. What are some of the insights or realizations that au pairs have when they come to America that is really different for them? So one of the fun ones I realized right away, my first South African au pair, right after she got here, she thought she had a really big business idea, and that was America's lacking fencing companies. She actually thought, why are there not that many fences? And what she was noticing is, it's not very common for Americans to have fences in their front yards, but in South Africa it is. A fence is considered more of a necessity there, usually because of the criminal activity, not always. While in America, a fence is more delineated to keep the kids safe in the backyard or just say, this is my property. On the opposite side of that, I was watching an au pair video from a Swedish girl, and she said that she was really saddened by how many fences were in America. So completely different than my South African au pair. And the reason why it made her sad, she was walking around with her host kids through backyards, kind of in a foresty area, and she came across fences and she couldn't go very far. And in her country, land is more considered shared amongst everybody, and that you should be able to go on any land anywhere. It's not personal property. So that was a really different and interesting insight compared to what my South African had. So just keeping that in mind, everything can be viewed really differently, positively or negatively. Jumping into some of the other things, obviously food is a really big one, not only your food preferences, but food prep. For instance, in America, we typically keep our eggs in the refrigerator, while a lot of other countries don't wash the egg, which takes off the protective coating, and they can keep it in dry room temp for a very long time, and it's just fine. One that I thought was interesting was when we went out to eat and we had shrimp or lobster, we would take off the tails and throw that away. And my au pair from South Africa was like, that's the best part. How could you throw away the tails? So she loved eating the tails, and we thought that was just something you threw away. I've heard from a host mom who had a German that as she was prepping raw meat, the German was just eating the raw meat, which of course in America we think you don't eat raw meat. It's dangerous. It's not something we do. But there, she did it. So what's considered appropriate for food prep, how you store things, and what you eat can be very different. In fact, then that gets down to like, what do we eat with and how do we serve things? Not across all of America, but there is a large minority of Americans who like to just use paper plates and paper cups and plasticware that you can just throw away instead of washing this. And many countries would be horrified by this and find this very wasteful. So another difference there in how we use things and the wastefulness of it. Our medical system is a huge one, right? In America, it's privatized and it's very expensive. Hence why Aupairs are recommended to get most of their medical and dental completed before they come here. And that can be a really shocking thing for them to discover how expensive it is. On the other hand, some of our stuff might be more available than it would be in certain countries. I heard that in some European countries, certain things like in Germany might not be available over the counter, like Advil or ibuprofen, where you can just walk into the store and buy it here. Obviously, our use of measurement systems is different here. We're one of the few countries that still uses the old imperial English system instead of the metric system. We are taught the metric system, but everyday use is the English system. So we talk more in pounds, inches, miles per hour, versus most of the rest of the world talks in kilograms and grams and kilometers. So that's definitely our Fahrenheit versus Celsius. So even describing where you live and what it's like is more difficult. But technology can make this a lot easier. I love that we've got Alexa in the house and I can just ask her, what's this in Celsius? So I can describe that. Some other things that are different, we celebrate different holidays, like Halloween and Thanksgiving and 4th of July are very American. So just describing what that's like. Another one is our corporate work culture. Americans are very big on working hard. We get vacation, but not as much. For instance, a max vacation of someone very experienced might be 4 weeks, whereas 6 weeks is where you start in a lot of European countries. And even when we get vacation, we don't take it all. We work longer than the hours we have, and just a work hard kind of culture, which is kind of surprising to a lot of Europeans. We also have daylight savings time. This one's a real shocker. The fact that in the fall, we go backwards an hour, and in the spring, we go forward an hour. It was so surprising to one of my au pairs. She actually stayed up during one of the daylight savings time to watch the clock actually go from 12:59. It should have gone to 1, and that went back to midnight. She actually recorded that on her iPhone because it's just such a weird concept, which I think I would agree. When you really think about it nowadays, it makes no sense that we do that. I think it was for farmers back before electricity, but hey, we do it, so we're used to it, and it's just something different to experience. So those were some of the examples of some different insights. I'm sure that others have many more. I could go on this subject. It's kind of fun. So what do you do with that? When you're in interviews, just knowing some of these differences might come across in the interview. For instance, whether they're making eye contact. If they're from an Asian culture, it's not considered polite to stare into somebody's eyes. So realize that. If they want to talk more on the relationship side and not get right down to the business side, that's also an Asian culture thing. So if you start to see some things that are weird, or maybe they're not smiling because that's not a normal thing, or it's, making that small talk is not a normal thing. These don't necessarily reflect on their personality. It might be a common culture. You might want to bring that up and talk about it and talk about how that's different and how you would deal with that. And then how can you reduce the culture shock for your au pair? I think this is a really good one. You can actually put it in your au pair handbook. Say, hey, here's some really common, surprising insights, like the fact that we have taxes and we don't show it on the stuff you buy. So that item that says it's $2, it might actually be $2.15 when you buy it. That surprises a lot of people. So that's practical. Same thing with tipping a waiter or waitress and knowing that ahead of time. That can be very useful just in their everyday life when they get started here. And it can help prep them ahead of time, start thinking about these differences. And it can also be a really fun icebreaker, just when you're first getting to know each other, starting off dinners with, what did you notice today that's different? Or what's the same? Or what did you like or not like? And how can I help you adjust to that culture? Are some really great ideas. I hope this was insightful for you. I'd love to hear more of your comments down below on interesting things that you as an au pair or host family have learned from each other. And I'd love for you to check out some of these other great videos. Thanks. Bye.